A single frightened whisper stopped a man worth billions in his tracks, and less than 10 seconds later, the bright afternoon celebration erupted into screams as a massive steel lighting tower crashed exactly where he would have been standing. Hundreds of stunned faces turned toward the trembling young boy whose courage had saved a life no one imagined could ever be in danger, while cameras kept rolling and a billionaire who believed money could solve every problem suddenly realized the greatest gift he had ever received came from someone who owned almost nothing. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, if you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us that every life matters. The city of Ashcroft had awakened beneath clear blue skies, with warm sunlight pouring across the riverfront park where thousands of people had gathered for the annual Community Innovation Fair. Families wandered between colorful tents, children laughed while chasing bubbles floating through the air, volunteers handed out lemonade, and local musicians filled the breeze with cheerful melodies. It was the kind of afternoon that made strangers smile at one another without thinking. Everyone, however, seemed to be waiting for one man. Garrick Ellsworth was arriving. At 56 years old, Garrick had built one of the largest technology companies in North America. Newspapers called him a genius. Business magazines celebrated him as a visionary. Investors admired his fearless decisions. Yet outside boardrooms, people often described him as distant, guarded, and emotionally unreachable. Years of success had surrounded him with executives, assistants, and security teams until ordinary conversations had become surprisingly rare. He donated millions to charities every year, but he rarely met the people those donations were meant to help. Somewhere along the way, generosity had become another business transaction. Only a few blocks away, 12-year-old Caleb Foster was helping his grandmother arrange handmade wooden birdhouses on a folding table. Caleb's parents had died in a highway accident when he was 6, leaving his grandmother, Eleanor Foster, to raise him alone. Money was always scarce, but Eleanor possessed something wealth could never purchase. She noticed people. She remembered names. She listened before speaking. Caleb had inherited that same quiet attentiveness. While other children hurried from booth to booth searching for excitement, Caleb watched the world carefully. He noticed nervous expressions, loose cables, frightened animals, lonely people sitting by themselves. His grandmother often said that some hearts were born with ears that could hear trouble before anyone else. As the afternoon crowd grew larger, Garrick's convoy arrived. Security officers stepped from polished black vehicles before opening his door. Reporters rushed forward with microphones while city officials welcomed him with rehearsed smiles. Garrick politely shook hands, posed for photographs, and followed organizers toward the central stage where he would announce a scholarship program for underprivileged students. Everything appeared perfectly organized. Every schedule had been checked repeatedly. Every safety inspection had supposedly been completed. Yet Caleb's attention drifted upward toward the enormous lighting structure suspended above the stage. Earlier that morning he had watched workers struggle to secure one of its support cables after a delivery truck accidentally brushed against the base. They believed they had fixed it, but one metal connector still looked slightly twisted. Most people never looked up. Caleb did. He noticed the afternoon wind growing stronger. He noticed the cable vibrating differently from the others. He noticed tiny flakes of rust falling whenever the structure swayed. Then he noticed Garrick walking directly beneath it while smiling for another photograph. Caleb's heartbeat accelerated. His grandmother saw his face change and instinctively turned toward the stage, but before she could understand why, Caleb was already weaving through the crowd. He slipped between adults carrying cameras, ducked beneath a television tripod, and reached the billionaire just as another loud cheer distracted everyone else. Caleb leaned close enough to avoid causing panic and whispered only a few urgent words, asking the billionaire not to move suddenly but to quietly follow him several steps to the side. Something in the boy's terrified expression reached Garrick more powerfully than any shouted warning could have. Without fully understanding why, Garrick trusted him. 8 seconds later, the damaged connector snapped, the towering metal framework collapsed with a deafening crash, smashing into the exact section of stage where Garrick had been standing. Dust exploded into the sunlight. Equipment shattered. Microphones screeched before falling silent. The crowd gasped as security officers rushed toward the wreckage, expecting the worst. Instead, they found Garrick standing several yards away beside a trembling young boy whose knees nearly gave out from relief. Emergency crews quickly confirmed that several workers had suffered minor injuries, but everyone had survived. Engineers later concluded that the damaged support had been missed during the final inspection. News cameras immediately focused on Garrick, expecting a dramatic statement about the accident. Instead, he looked only at Caleb. For the first time in many years, Garrick struggled to find words that he knelt in front of the boy who had saved his life and simply wrapped him in a grateful embrace. The crowd, which had moments earlier been frozen in fear, erupted into heartfelt applause. Eleanor hurried through the gathering and hugged her grandson tightly, tears streaming down her face as she realized how close tragedy had come. That afternoon changed more than one life. Garrick insisted on visiting Eleanor and Caleb's modest home the following weekend. His assistants assumed he intended to deliver a generous financial reward and then return to his demanding schedule. Instead, he spent nearly 6 hours sitting at their small kitchen table drinking homemade soup, listening to stories about Eleanor's late daughter, Caleb's love for repairing broken bicycles, and the neighborhood children who gathered every Saturday because Eleanor never let anyone leave hungry. Garrick found himself laughing more than he had in years. Before leaving, he wandered into Caleb's tiny bedroom. Instead of expensive electronics or fashionable decorations, he found shelves filled with repaired toys waiting to be donated, books borrowed from the public library, and notebooks full of sketches showing ideas for playgrounds designed for children with disabilities. Garrick realized the boy who had saved him possessed an imagination guided not by profit but by compassion. Over the following months, Garrick quietly became part of their lives. He attended Caleb's school science fair without informing the media. He helped Eleanor repair her leaking roof but insisted local volunteers receive full credit. He invited Caleb to tour research laboratories, not to impress him with wealth but to encourage curiosity. In return, Caleb challenged Garrick in ways no executive ever had. The boy asked why so many brilliant inventions remained unavailable to struggling communities. He wondered why company cafeterias threw away food while shelters lacked meals. He questioned why business success seemed disconnected from everyday kindness. Those innocent questions echoed inside Garrick long after each visit. At the next annual shareholder meeting, investors expected another presentation celebrating record profits. Instead, Garrick unveiled a completely different vision. His company would dedicate substantial resources toward affordable educational technology, expand apprenticeship programs in underserved neighborhoods, and require every executive to spend time volunteering directly within the communities their projects affected. Some investors resisted, fearing reduced profits. Others quietly applauded. Garrick remained calm. Saving one life, he explained, had taught him how easily success loses its meaning when people become invisible behind numbers. Caleb never enjoyed being called a hero. Whenever journalists asked about that afternoon, he shrugged and explained that anyone should help another person if they noticed danger. Eleanor always smiled because she knew the truth was simpler. Caleb had been raised to care enough to pay attention. Years passed beneath countless bright mornings. Garrick's company continued thriving despite predictions of failure. Employee satisfaction increased. Community partnerships flourished. Scholarship recipients returned as engineers, teachers, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Garrick himself changed in quieter ways. He no longer rushed through charity events surrounded by assistants. He stayed afterward to hear people's stories. He remembered birthdays. He wrote handwritten letters instead of signing printed cards prepared by staff. When Caleb graduated from high school, Garrick sat proudly beside Eleanor in the front row. As the principal praised Caleb's achievements in engineering and community leadership, Garrick thought back to the frightened boy weaving through a crowded festival under the afternoon sun. The greatest investment of his lifetime had never involved stocks, mergers, or technology. It had begun with trusting a child whose courage outweighed his fear. A decade after the accident, the Riverfront Park hosted another community innovation fair. A beautiful memorial garden stood near the rebuilt stage, dedicated not to tragedy but to everyday courage. Children ran across fresh green grass while families gathered beneath the same warm daylight that had witnessed one extraordinary moment years before. Caleb, now an accomplished civil engineer, unveiled a new safety initiative designed to improve public event structures nationwide. Garrick stood nearby, no longer introducing Caleb as the boy who had saved his life but as the man who had inspired him to become a better human being. Before the ceremony concluded, Garrick quietly thanked Eleanor. She smiled gently and reminded him that money can build buildings, but love builds people. Garrick nodded because he finally understood the difference. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing a moment when someone's kindness, courage, or simple act of paying attention changed your life or restored your faith in people. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that heroes rarely wear expensive suits or stand on grand stages. Sometimes they are ordinary people with compassionate hearts who notice what everyone else overlooks. One brave choice, one quiet warning, and one moment of trusting another human being can transform countless lives, proving that true greatness is measured not by wealth or power but by the kindness we carry into the lives of others.